We're speaking starts now. It's Big Dirty Money Day.
It is Big Dirty Money Day. That sounds like so much more fun.
I know, it makes me think of Old Dirty Bastard. I'm like, hey, dirty. But it's not fun. We can't dance to this dirty money.
No, we can't, but we got to talk about it. And we're going to do that tonight with Jen Taub, the author of Big Dirty Money. So really, really excited to have her on the show this evening.
Yes, white collar crime, y'all. Get ready for it. We're going to be talking a lot about it and how it has to do with our current political situation. So I'm excited. I'm stoked. I'm going to ask her about Billions.
Billion. I haven't caught up on the new season of Billions, so
it's a good show.
Good reminder. Yes, it is. We digress.
Sorry,
as we occasionally are wont to do. Let's move on to. We've got questions from you all, so we want to go ahead and take the first one.
Yes,
which is from Jerry. How do we, as a nation, place a higher value on truth telling while calling out those that lie and create and promote disinformation? It begins with each one of us, right? We have to be willing to call out the lies. We have to educate ourselves so we're not just telling people that they're wrong, but we've actually gone and looked for legitimate information from good sources to make sure that whatever it is we're passing on to friends, family, in real life or in social media world, that we are not part of the problem with spreading disinformation and misinformation. And we have to have the courage to stand up and say that's not true, and here are the facts. And if somebody pushes back on that, ask them where they got their facts.
Yeah, and I think staying calm as well, because sometimes it's so infuriating when somebody hits you with stuff that is just absolutely not possibly true. Yeah. And you want to step in front of them and say, no, that's not true. But you have to stay calm. You have to stay calm because that's the way you have a civic conversation. And so we are encouraging those kind of conversations so that we can come together as a country.
Yeah, that sounds lovely. Let's do that.
Let's do that.
Sandra, for several weeks, my fear and anxiety about the future of our USA is constantly on my mind. Are we going to make it through this?
Well, okay. Yes, we are, because the country has been through quite a bit. Right. And so I think it feels like it's reaching a fever pitch because we do have social media. And so everybody is able to kind of platform their different ideas about things. And so I think it's kind of like that thing where it's like mass hysteria in a way, social media mass hysteria. But we have to put our fear and anxiety aside and focus on the prize, which is being able to stay ahead of the game, get engaged, and be louder than the people who are trying to divide the country, and be louder with the facts, with the truth, which is a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight, because a lot of our political leaders, our corporate leaders, are engaging in a style of politics that is basically just throwing out what democracy is all about. And so we have to be louder with the truth, and anxiety isn't going to help us get there, unfortunately. I know we all want to like curl up into the fetal position and cry. I recommend ice cream instead of crying with ice cream, perhaps.
Yeah, because that's their goal, right? Is to make us feel like this is all so overwhelming. It's not going to be okay. We withdraw, we stop participating, we don't get out and vote, we don't register people, we just decide that we can't handle it. And that's letting them win. So we can't let that happen.
Yes, we have to cry, eat ice cream, and vote. Y'all, that's going to be our mantra from here on out.
Three things.
Three things. Speaking of three, next question. Kathy, what involvement will the Lincoln Project have in Texas politics?
Well, Kathy, funny you should ask. A couple of weeks ago, the Lincoln Project created an ad that was going after Governor Greg Abbott in Texas for his abysmal, horrific nightmare of a COVID response that he has had, banning mask mandates and all the rest. And we created that ad, which was supposed to play during the UT Austin versus Rice game that would be on the Longhorn Network. And miraculously,
lo and behold, right before airtime.
Yeah, suddenly, 10 minutes before it was supposed to air, it got pulled because the University of Texas made a decision that they do not air things that are political in nature.
And that's a little bit weird because, and you can check out the ad, by the way, on our YouTube. But what did we just saw something in a stadium, in the middle of a stadium. What was it we saw?
Yeah, I know. So if they don't want to do things that are political in nature connected to the Longhorns, it seems a little odd that Breitbart News had an exclusive interview with Governor Greg Abbott, not only in the stadium, but on the damn field.
On the field!
Right on the field with a big Texas Longhorns logo behind him. So I don't know.
Not nary a football around, no cheerleaders. It was like, I'm like, if you're going to do it in a stadium, do it big. But what are they doing in the stadium? They could have literally done it any place else.
Right. And they weren't talking Longhorns football.
Oh, they didn't talk about football? Okay.
They didn't talk anything about sports. It was all political all the time. And
flag on the play. I think that's how that goes. I would have just rushed the field. Flag on the play for sure. It's suspect. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying, but
yeah,
it's a little suspect.
I don't know why this has popped in my head now. But fun fact, Governor Abbott is a UT grad. He's an alumnus.
You don't say.
Yeah, and he appoints the members of the UT System Board of Regents, and he oversees UT Austin. And appoints
so like connections. He's like connected. He knows them. He might even have them on speed dial or like on his phone. Just hey.
His political guy said he had absolutely no involvement whatsoever, and
I believe that
nobody. Political hacks would never say things that aren't true. So, but interesting fun fact about Greg Abbott and the ad not running. And
yeah, but you have to go see the ad because it's important. And it is. And I think lots of people have seen it already, so can't keep a good ad out of the viewers' eye speed. They're there to see it. This kind of ties in perfectly with our guest.
Yeah, it really does. Not that there was any big dirty money involved, but tonight we have Professor Jennifer Taub. She's a legal scholar and author of Big Dirty Money, Making White Collar Criminals Pay, which has just come out in paper book. I do too. I like the original title of it, and now this has been revised a little bit. We're going to talk about that. Professor Taub's advocacy centers on following the money and promoting transparency and opposing corruption. We are so happy to have you here with us tonight.
Thank you, Lisa and Maya. I am so happy to be here, even though I'm now realizing that I am plant deficient. I have plenty of teacups if you'd like a cup of tea, but
I always like a cup
I love a cup of tea. I'm like, sip. I love a good cup of tea. We'll send you some plants
here, right?
Yeah, I can easily send you my plant, and Maya knows why.
Yes,
it travels well.
As we say, it's very hardy. Those plants.
Hardy, like our democracy, okay? Because we're going to start with positivity and hope on this. So actually, the first thing I want to ask you about is, so we unfortunately lost Colin Powell, but a lot of your positivity stems from one of his rules, his 13th rule. I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's really wonderful that you bring this up because given the subject matter that I focus on, it's funny. People often say, I read your book and it made me so angry, or how do you like sleep at night and get through the day? And it's funny. I do think that you just put up there that 13th rule. I saw it the other day. Perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. And maybe it's because when I grew up in the Midwest, I was a Little League football cheerleader, but also maybe it's because I think during the Trump era, the minute he was elected, I knew this was going to be a long haul.
Mhm.
And I knew that, I'm a heavy user of social media and I can obsess on political and legal issues. And one thing I did the morning after he was elected, when I was kind of at a loss, the next day I started counting, like day one. And I promised people I would count every single day and I'd wake up with a positive message.
I love
Not that I
that.
didn't have other things to say throughout the day.
Wow.
And I just it was for me. And I didn't end it until January 20th, 2021.
Wow. Okay.
And every single day. And at one point I thought maybe I should quit, but I would meet people at first just in my town. This is before COVID, when you would see people and they would stop me, at a restaurant or on the street and say, hi, you don't know me, but you're the reason I can get up in the morning because of your positive messages. And I thought, wow, I'm just trying to cheer myself up, and then this spread bigger, right? Obviously bigger than that, where people would say, my cousin from, California told me I should follow you. And and it kind of, it struck me as not really entirely real. And then I did realize, I think what Powell says is absolutely true. And we talk about a, force multiplier. That sounds like it's military, but it's a different kind of power. The power of optimism, knowing that, to quote one of my favorite non-elected official leaders, MLK, we might not get to the top of the mountain, but someone's going to get there. Things are going to change.
Yeah.
And even if we're rolling things back, we're here not just for ourselves. We're here for our kids, wherever they may be at the moment. We're here for those future grandkids. We're here for those other generations, and we cannot give up. So that's how it started. And I feel that same way right now. We're in, grave danger right now that that people are succumbing to all these kinds of lies, refusing to believe in this deadly disease, the lies about the election, the lies about this kind of kleptocracy that we're developing. So the reason I think I stay optimistic is I can still talk. We can still talk about this. I know that we're safe. It's like Tim Schneider's book. What does he say? Don't consent in advance. Keep speaking. The minute that I'm not allowed to speak is the minute I worry. I get to talk to you. I get to publish books. People seem like they're angry enough to maybe get on board and make change. So to me, that's the optimism.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And that's, we absolutely have to hang onto that, because that is what keeps recharging our batteries. It sounds like you might have, have a second book
coming in the works. Yes.
165 positive messages to keep you sane and out of bed.
I'd buy it.
So you just mentioned the next generation. One of the things that the next generation is really focused on, and hopefully we're all talking about it more, is intersectionality. And there is one of the things that you describe in your book is that there's real not good intersectionality between white collar crime, politics, obviously money, and men. Tends to be more men than women who are in those very privileged positions and making the bad decisions that they are. That also has a impact on other intersectionality, like BIPOC folks and lower income people and women. So can you talk to us about how those two things work off each other?
I would love to, and not just because I love Kimberly Crenshaw and, theory, as a law professor, that she started thinking about the lens of intersectionality. And this is something, that we've been thinking about since the 90s, and it's just surprising to me that it's just taking people so long to think about this. I think the best way maybe I can express it is, white collar crime is like cheating at a board game. but not everybody gets a seat at the table at that board game. So of course, you're going to see the kinds of people caught for most white collar criminal activities being the kind of people who were let into the, into the boardrooms, into the places where a lot of the money is. So it's not, I don't believe that there's a certain kind of person just because white men tend to be the ones who are arrested, or even not arrested, tends to be the perpetrators, tend to be caught, tend to, even ultimately, if go to jail, tends to be more often white men. It doesn't mean that, you're born a white man and your destiny is white collar criminality. It's that's where the opportunities are. The motive is there, right? And I think it's really important, though, for me to talk about this area where mostly wealthy and well-connected, white people get involved in crime and the real harm it causes people, because it's, I think, opening up people's understanding about the way we think about crime, the way we think about people who might cause us danger or harm. More people are afraid of, I'm really afraid of, some hypothetical, inner-city drug dealer person who we're going to think is a young Black male who could hurt my family because it could get my kid hooked on drugs. Right? That's the accepted narrative. Well, like the reality is Purdue Pharma, wealthy white family, were the biggest drug pushers that we knew of, right? And they actually walked away without any kind of criminal sentences, even though their company itself has pleaded guilty twice to white collar crimes, right? And I think it also, you can look at the way, I in my book, I talk about Eric Garner, right? We could talk about George Floyd, both of them, since they were involved in, were economic crimes. Eric Garner was accused of essentially tax evasion, and he gets tackled and killed on a street, because he's trying to, deprive New York State and city of the excise tax they get on these cigarettes because he's gotten them from elsewhere. Right? This is his hustle. This is how he's trying to make it. Let's try to imagine, on, April 15th, if, upper middle class white woman, goes and puts her tax return into a post office box. Can you imagine the local police coming, circling, tackling me because I've committed tax evasion? Yeah. Because the difference here is, those police officers like Pantaleo and I forget the other guys, they decided that they didn't violate his civil rights because it seemed like reasonable force under the circumstance. How is tax evasion something you should use force, right? But it's our whole mindset, right? And so part of my book is trying to deal with that. Same thing with George Floyd. He allegedly was passing off, a $20 bill.
Sorry to interrupt, but because you make this point in your book, and I love it, where you talk about how the people in power, people with money, make laws and enforce laws that privilege their continued wealth. Right. And you talked, I guess the original subtitle of your book was Shocking Injustice and Unseen Cost of White Collar Crime, now making white collar criminals pay. So speaking to that, why the change, and do we have a greater chance of that happening under Biden?
I think the way the question landed is the reason for the change. So the hardcover book came out in October of 2020. And at that time, there was only hope that there would be a new administration, not, by someone who I consider to be, grifting white collar criminal who occupied the White House. And I thought if that changed, then we would, that it wouldn't, and it did change. And I was hopeful that we'd have more of a crackdown on white collar crime. We can talk about that in a moment. But when the new book came out this year, I thought now it was time. Now we had an opportunity. I hadn't seen much action out of the Department of Justice. I didn't see much priority when I made the changes and the book got published at the end of September. But that's why it was kind of like making white collar criminals pay. That and the new preface was kind of like a love letter to Merrick Garland saying, "You're a good man. You said you want to do justice. This is the time. Let's do this." And I was not, this is that kind of optimism, pessimism thing, frustrated, angry, wanting change, I've written a lot of, pieces about what's going on. Why hasn't there been a special counsel for all these allegations against Trump? Where's the crackdown? And happy to see just 2 weeks ago, high level official who's, near the top of the Justice Department, named John Carlin, give a speech putting, corporate offenders on notice that the party's over. So, I'm glad. I think we're going to make white collar criminals pay. And I think it's starting right now.
I sure hope that's the case. It's so long past time. Even before Donald Trump was in the White House, we were way overdue making white collar criminals pay.
But let's be clear about this. I mean, it was under the previously, corporate criminals in particular, meaning, when a corporation commits crime, as well as the officers. Those crackdowns have happened in our history. And in the speech I mentioned, the lawyer from the Justice Department echoed some of the points I made in my book, which anyone can make. It's obvious that we had 2 recent periods of crackdowns. One was after the accounting scandals of the early 2000s, after Enron and WorldCom. And the other period was a bit before that, in the late 80s, early 90s, after the saving and loan debacles. And I wrote about that in my earlier book called Other People's Houses. But at any rate, they put over 1,000, bank officers after the savings and loans debacle in jail. And the savings and loan debacle was very similar to the 2008 financial crisis. That's what my previous book had said. Same thing happens after the Enron WorldCom scandal. They had an Enron task force, and the numbers are incredibly impressive. We're talking about, chief executive officers, chief financial officers, and the like being prosecuted and being imprisoned, after that. And then we didn't see any real corporate crackdown during the Obama era. Yes, we did see a tremendous uptick in cases in terms of insider trading, but that's kind of like individual wrongdoing specific to someone trying to make money off their own company's stock. We didn't see it. And, John Carlin didn't cover up that fact in his speech, and it's time, right? It's time to get back to that kind of accountability. And he made clear that the department's going to do that. I mean, of course, the proof is in the prosecutions, and the proof is in better compliance. And I think we're going to see it, but, check back with me in a few months.
Yeah, we've had a real accountability problem across the board in all sorts of different areas, and hopefully we're going to start seeing some of that. One of the things that I thought was really interesting in your book is you describe how Trump throughout his life has benefited basically from being a white collar criminal following in his father's footsteps. And that type of activity is what has eroded people's confidence and trust in institutions and the criminal justice system. But at the same time, that getting away with it aspect is something that the MAGA folks really like about Donald Trump. So they're the ones who've been getting screwed, but they still like that now it's their guy who's doing the screwing. So yay team.
Yeah. Well, just to make an analogy, America, it's a difference between reality and fiction, and he's kind of blurred that. Like in America, we have always had our love affair with like the mob in terms of movies, right? People love watching the Godfather movies, even if they don't want organized crime and violence. It's hard to explain, and maybe we would need someone who's a psychotherapist or Sigmund Freud in here to explain why it is that we like to watch people behaving badly. Maybe it's sort of some sort of way of working out our fantasies around wanting so much money or wanting so much power, but it's on the screen and it's not reality. I think the problem with Trump is that he is a fake reality TV star and a fake reality president, and those lines became really blurred. Like he never was really a successful businessman, but then he does The Apprentice and everyone thinks he was. He never was a successful president. He was impeached twice. He was, I don't even need to go to the list with your audience. But he just tries to create that kind of reality. And so I think a lot of his followers, it's like they're watching a movie or a TV show. They don't they're not really like latching, they're sort of detached from reality, I believe. and not really fully understanding that he's grifting them, that
Right.
they're the target,
Yeah, and I love that you're using the word grifting right now because it segues perfectly into something that you talk about in the book, which is how we characterize Trump. We have often been characterizing him as this authoritarian strong man, but you have a different take on how we should perceive him, and that is as a white collar criminal. Can you talk a bit about why it's so important to frame it that way?
Yeah, I mean, when he was elected, I was thinking, I can't, or when he was running for office, he just struck me as the same kind of con artist that I had been studying when I wrote the book I mentioned, the previous book, comparing the savings and loan, the reckless and crooked savings and loan, bankers to the 2008 crisis. So I had looked at a lot of cases where these Texas and California savings and loan, where these people took over these banks and used them as their own piggy banks, and were just always, grifting and lying. And so when I saw the Trump story, and he was already, he'd already had the RICO case, he'd already had settlements with the SEC, there were money laundering allegations, and I'm thinking, this guy is just like those con artists who were able to fool everybody until their banks completely collapsed, and even after that they were still lying. So the reason why I think it's important to frame or to think of him first as a white collar criminal, and second as a strong man, is because, well, there is a relationship in those worlds. But if you think of him just as something foreign, like, oh, he's Mussolini or he's Hitler, I think people get afraid because I think they don't understand, those seem like historical figures. They're not part of what America is. But if you think about more that he's a homegrown white collar criminal where we just didn't enforce the law, we let him get, one after another, infinite second chances. I think he's more understandable, and he's more of a clown and someone who's easier to manage. And it makes us understand this not as a once in a lifetime or once in a century bad guy, but really something that he is an outgrowth, that he's extruded from a system that doesn't actually crack down on these people.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
interesting. And it kind of dovetails right into my next question, which is, so many of our League of Project supporters can identify with your epilogue title of Hope Springs Eternal, because so many of us have hope that one day we're going to see Donald Trump perp walked, and that might not be what actually happened. But what is the hope that you have at this point? Because he is the front runner for the Republican nomination in 24 right now.
So I hope my parents don't vote for him this time.
Oh.
Did I just say that?
I will send you extra plants. You need more plants, clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So I didn't think I was going to say that. Yeah. No, he has torn apart families. He's torn apart this country. My hope is that the prosecutors who are pursuing the cases against him now, including the one where his own company has been indicted, follow the facts and the law where they lead and aren't afraid to do justice. And I was pleased to see, I don't know if you saw in the Times today, that Mimi Rocah, who's the new DA in Westchester County, is also looking into some of the matters there. I'm hopeful for what's going on in New York. I'm not so sure that, although I'm pleased that the Garland Justice Department is cracking down on white collar crime. I'm hoping that allows him then to not be so afraid, perhaps, about the political implications, or making it look like he's just against Trump, that he just looks at the facts and the law where that is. So that, I guess, to me, a perp walk isn't what I want. I would like, I would like a truth walk. I want truth, and I really want, I want accountability. And if that means, an arrest and an imprisonment, fine. I want, I more just want the truth, and if that means a jury coming up with a verdict saying, yes, I think X was obstruction of justice or what have you, I'm really into the truth that this country needs, we have a reconciliation.
Yep. I think that is exactly what we need to restore faith in the system, is to see the system actually work and get that accountability that we all desperately need. No more second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 2 billionth chances. So, Professor Taub, I'm so grateful that you were here with us today to give us some hope on that. We see things are shifting. So, appreciate you being here. And we will send you some plants so that you have something to remember us by.
Well, please send me the hardy kind that Lisa has.
Yes.
The
kind you can forget forever to water. And it looks lovely every week. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you. Accountability. It's what's for dinner. I like so much about what happened in her book, and part of it, I was really thinking about how white collar criminals also are now weaponizing just regular old crime, because that's what it feels like January 6th was. It's like they figured out how to get people who can't participate in the white collar crime part of things. They're like, let's get them storming the Capitol. And so we're seeing, like in real time almost, how it's trickling down, if you will. Like this crime up here is now actually literally eroding like the fabric of our democracy, and we're seeing it. So without that accountability at the top level, I think we're just going to end up seeing more and more of that. So
yeah, I hope what we're going to see out of the January 6th Commission is starting to go up the food chain some. We've seen an awful lot of folks from January 6th who were they were certainly amazingly in the wrong doing what they were doing, looking for Mike Pence to hang and wanting to kill Nancy Pelosi and storming the Capitol and all the rest of it, injuring as many police officers and causing deaths. But I want to see it go up the food chain, because that's where it started.
Right.
And it's going to happen again if there aren't people in positions of power who end up paying a price for what they did. It needs to, we need to see some members of Congress held to account.
No, for sure. It's like parenting, really. Like if a kid doesn't suffer the consequences of their actions, they are emboldened and they will do it again and again and again. And I think that is what we're seeing right now. So none of that. We will have none of that. I think, but they've been pretty crazy this past week. I kind of want to check out what happened last week in the Republican Party. Do we have that?
Yeah, that sounds terrifying. Let's do that.
Let's watch it.
In case you didn't know it, Joe Biden is the president of the United States in name only. Someone else is running the White House.
We're not going to take it anymore. I see a civil war coming.
The Trump revolution has just begun.
We renew our call for a fair and nonpartisan investigation into the death of Ashley Babbitt.
It's Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich. We've gotten a lot of calls, a lot of emails, but there's one thing people definitely want to see. They want to see more Chucks. So people, you want more Chucks? You got more Chucks.
We had 40,000 Brazilians come through the Yuma sector alone, headed for Connecticut, wearing designer clothes and Gucci bags.
Halloween has come early here because nothing on this rule bill says debt limit.
In this rule, I'll lend him my glasses. It says in the title, increase the public debt limit. I don't know how much clearer it could be. It's in the title.
Our culture today is trying to completely demasculate all of the young men in our culture. And so I'm telling you, all of you moms here, the people who I said were the most vicious in our movement, if you are raising a young man, please raise them to be a monster.
Vice President Kamala Harris, because that's still a thing, she hired these child-paid actors to pretend to like her.
Let's just say Texas does get a vote in the future and votes for a Texit. Do you think other states would follow Texas out of the union? And how would Texas defend itself if it did break away? Would Texas have nuclear weapons?
I also want to invite Kim from Chesapeake. She's carrying an American flag that was carried at the peaceful rally with Donald J. Trump on January 6th.
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
So much to unpack there.
Oh yeah, there's not a single person in that ad who should be a parent, including Madison Cawthorn. As a mom of sons, do not follow any parenting recommendations that come from that asshat.
Monster. Raise them to be monsters. Like, I was like, is that a metaphor for something? Is this like the monsters in Monsters, Inc. that are like sweet little monsters? Like, what in the world is he even talking about? And why is he on a stage doing it? The fact that we continue to platform this nonsense in this country, like, these are the people who are supposed to be making the rules. So we wonder why everything is devolving into chaos. It's because we have these people making the rules. So what we really need everybody to do is get incredibly active at the local level. You need to start holding the people around you accountable. We can't forget about the power that we have, because we actually do have power as people as long as we speak up. That's crazy. Everybody should be running for office after seeing that. We need, like, I want all, like, the school teachers to run. The
bar
moms
is so low.
It's so low.
So
How low?
There is no limbo competition. Anybody can even compete in to get under the bar that is that freaking low.
And if, yeah, and Lauren, I just, does Lauren Boebert ever make any other face other than this?
No.
Okay, didn't think so. Didn't want to go there, but like, it was driving me crazy in this clip. I was like,
rat face.
Unacceptable. All right.
All right. So we have another show tomorrow night. We don't, but The Breakdown does. You can join Tara Setmayer and Rick Wilson at the new time, same time that we're on, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific. And we're wrapping up for the day. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Keep the questions coming.
Yes. Keep the questions coming. We'll see you next week at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we have a message from Ryan Wiggins from the Lincoln Project.
Hi, I'm Ryan Wiggins at the Lincoln Project, and there's a lot going on we need to talk about. Trump's been hinting at a 2024 presidential run using the big lie that the 2020 election was stolen from him, and it's working. New polls show fewer Republicans are willing to hold the January 6th rioters criminally responsible. Meanwhile, GOP-controlled states are leading voter suppression campaigns nationwide. The Lincoln Project is working to neuter the current GOP-controlled government, to ensure that future elections are fair and democratic, and to put power back in the hands of the people where it belongs. But we can't do it without you. Go to lincolnproject.us/donate to join in our long-term fight for democracy. We're honored to have you with us, and we're not letting up.